Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1051B, and today's date is August 17th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Storm is Approaching, and it looks like it's going to hit this fall. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, when we talk about Obamacare, we know Obamacare, it was not a benefit to the people. We know the insurance companies, they wrote the bill. And when you create something that is truly not a benefit to the people, where you're doing something to benefit yourself, and when I say yourself, I'm talking about the corporations, I'm talking about the U.S. government, it really never works out. Maybe for a short period of time, but in the long run, people catch on. They realize, you know something, I'm not paying all this money, I'm not getting the benefit, I'm not doing it. And this is what's happening to Obamacare right now. People are catching on and they're realizing, listen, why am I now paying $1,800 a month for health insurance with a $5,000 deductible and I just continually pay and pay and pay? People are realizing that this is why we see more than half actually, of the exchanges completely defaulting. This is why we see the numbers of people who are signing up to Obamacare continually dropping. They rather take the penalty. And if it's so great and it's so beneficial to the people, why is there a penalty on Obamacare? Well, we know why. Because they all got together in a room, they discussed it, and they said, hey, listen, we will provide health insurance, but the premiums are going to have to be very high. Everyone has to be in. How do we force people to get into this? I know. We'll penalize them. Nobody wants to be penalized, so they'll all jump into Obamacare. And this is what they tried. It didn't work. And we can see right now these corporations who are losing money because of their bill, they're blackmailing the government. So their bill, they wanted to profit from it. They are not. And now Aetna is out there threatening the United States government, saying, listen, we will pull out of Obamacare if you do not approve the merger with Humana. Well, when do corporations call the shots? Why would a corporation be allowed to threaten the United States government, the government that's supposed to be working for the people? Because the corporations tell the government what to do. This is a fascist country where corporations and government are intertwined. And most likely, Aetna will get their way. And this is something that we need to watch. Now, we understand the U.S. government central bankers, they want to control the narrative of the entire story of the United States and the world. And what I mean by that is they have control of the money supply. They have control of the corporate media. And they want control of the internet. The internet to them is like the Wild West, where people can just go on the internet like myself and many others and talk about what's going on around the world. Now, they don't want people to do this. They would like to shut them down. But of course, we have some parts of the Constitution still in effect, the Bill of Rights, where we're allowed to have freedom of the press. But we have to remember that they tried all different types of bills to push their agenda, where they said, okay, if you want to talk about anything that's going on in the world, you're going to have to get a license. They tried to push that through Congress, but that didn't go anywhere. And that would mean everyone on the internet would have to pay a fee and have to be approved by the government to be allowed to talk about things on the internet. So instead, they're doing the next best thing. Obama, within about 2 months or so, is going to give away control of the internet to the United Nations. And the United Nations will then control the internet. Now, we can see this is a move to set up a one world government. It's a lot easier to have the United Nations, which is really not part of any specific nation, but it seems that the United Nations likes to make the rules for many nations. And it's like a government body all in itself. Now, we can see where they're moving with this. Because the United Nations, to control the internet, will most likely make everyone get a log on. You'll have to log on, and they'll be able to track you once you do. You might have to sign up for a license or special type of access to have some type of blog. You'll be monitored. If they don't like what you're saying, they flip a switch. The U.S. government can say, hey, we can't control this. We don't control the internet. And we can see how this will control the freedom of speech. How they'll be able to control what is coming out of the news agencies. Because they control the corporate media, and then they will finally have control of the internet. And all the alternative media, all the new media, the truth media that is trying to get to the heart of the problem, they will also be controlled. And we can see that they're moving in this direction. They don't want people talking about things they can't control. And the internet is a huge, huge problem for them. Now, out in South Sudan, we understand the UN wants to bring in around 4,000 troops. And it's basically 4,000 troops to wage war. Now, of course, it's a peacekeeping mission, and we know it is not. The South Sudan president down there said absolutely not. And it looks like this whole thing, the deployment is delayed at this point. The government is stalling, saying that we don't want this here. And listen, if a government doesn't want the UN in their country, the UN really doesn't have the right to do this. Now, out in the South China Sea, we see that the United States government, central bankers, Japan, they are provoking China like crazy. Now, Japan, they released a video showing around 200 to 300 Chinese vessels near the disputed territory of the Senkaku Islands in East China in the South China Sea. And Japan is out there saying, see, look at all these ships. They're all out here. And they showed that they were fishing vessels. And there were also Chinese patrol boats that were protecting the fishing vessels. And I think there was about 28 or so Chinese patrol ships. Now, think about what the United States government central bankers have been saying. We have the right to sail our ships. These are the open seas, the law of the sea. But we have to remember that the United States never signed this whatsoever. They're just using it. And if this is the case, isn't that what China's doing? Sailing their ships in the open seas? Don't they have the right of way to do this? Of course they do. Plus, they're in the South China Sea. And they're protecting their ships. It's not like they have their ships in the Gulf of Mexico. I can understand the United States being upset, but the South China Sea, shared by many of the nations, Japan being one of them, yes, there's going to be a lot of ships in this area. And Japan also has patrol ships in this area. But we can see the whole point of this was to show that, look, they're in this area and there are patrol ships. And of course, what Japan did was they announced that, hey, you're getting very close to our area of the sea. Please back off. But the Chinese ships never entered it. They were in international water. But what they're doing here is they're trying to make everyone believe that this is a problem. Well, the only problem is that the United States, Japan, and the other nations, they are continually using this to provoke China to do something. They want an incident. They're hoping for one so they can push war. Now, the United States and South Korea, they are continually pushing North Korea. And we know the United States brought in the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, THAAD, and they placed it in the area of South Korea. Well, now they want to take it a step further. They have plans to set up the THAAD-like naval system, and they're going to equip their warships with this system so they can intercept missiles that North Korea fires. Now, I can see a situation where North Korea is testing one of their missiles, maybe shooting it into the ocean, and South Korea says the missile was heading for them, and they had to launch the THAAD missile system from one of their warships. And I can see how this can spiral out of control. And we'll have to watch that situation very carefully, because we can see right now the United States government central bankers, they're doing whatever they possibly can to start something in each one of these areas. In the South Pacific, the Middle East, Eastern Europe. They're doing whatever they possibly can. They want something to occur. Now, out in Ukraine, we see the Kiev side. They are not going to coordinate the Minsk II ceasefire agreement. They're not going to add the amendments to the Ukrainian constitution on the issue of determining local government in the territories of the Donbass region. And they're not going to do anything. Negotiations are dead. They're not even going to be looking at it. So we can see right now they are not going to complete this whatsoever. Now, Kiev is out there saying that because of Russia, they are hurting our economy and we're losing $1 billion because of the Russian trade restrictions. Well, Ukraine placed sanctions on Russia, then Russia retaliated and placed trade restrictions on Ukraine. It's like Europe placing sanctions on Russia, and then Europe is getting hit with the food embargo from Russia. So for every action Ukraine, Europe takes, Russia counters that action. And then they turn around and they blame it on Russia. It's amazing how this is done here. So Poroshenko right now in Ukraine, he's calling for increased international presence in Donbass. He wants the OSCE armed and ready to enter Crimea and enter the Donbass region and take control of it. Now we know this is not going to happen. He's been calling for this for quite a while. And we can see right now, because of this failed attack in the infrastructure of Crimea, they're just trying anything they possibly can do to get this offensive off the ground. Yes, there's still shelling going on, but we can see right now they really want this war to go forward. But they can't make it look like they just came out of nowhere and started the war. They needed to make it look like it's a false flag. They needed to make it look like it was Russia in Crimea. They need to make it look like it was the southeastern people who started it. And this is the problem. They can't get them to do something. So most likely they're going to try some type of false flag. They attempted it in Crimea. It didn't work out. And I would expect they're going to try it once again. Now, the United States is out there, and they're trying to say that the deployment of bombers from Iran is completely illegal. Now, where are they getting this from? Well, they're saying it's from the UN Security Council Resolution 2231. And this resolution is on the sale and transfer of arms to Iran. So under the resolution, Russia did not violate any of it because they did not sell, transfer arms to Iran. Iran gave them permission to use a base. Russia has full control of the aircraft, the arms, and everything else. So they did not violate anything. Now, of course, the United States government central bankers, they're trying to figure out any reason where they can stop Russia from bombing Syria. And what I mean by Syria is the Islamic State, the United States government central bankers' terrorist groups inside of Syria. Now, Turkey, we understand, has been supporting the terrorists for quite a while. Germany has come out from their intel that they have, and they're saying, yes, we've just realized that Turkey supports terrorism. Now, we knew this all along. If you see what's happening here is, since Turkey is pivoting away from the United States, from the European countries, and moving closer to Iran and Russia, now the information is coming out that Turkey was supporting terrorism, supporting the Islamic State, helping them. Now, of course, the United States government, central bankers, the coalition forces, NATO, they were directing Turkey. They were saying, yes, this is what we need. This is what we want. Keep the borders open. Do not close them. But we can see things are changing right now. Russia has said to Turkey, listen, you need to close the border between yourself and Syria. And there has to be international control. And he cited Resolution 2165, which was adopted by the UN Security Council, which establishes control of humanitarian supplies and deploying observers to the border area. He says, up until now, there has been no international observers and specialists at the refugee camps. No one has been monitoring what has been going on inside of Turkey. Now, the United States knew this. The coalition forces knew this. They didn't want it. They didn't want to abide by this resolution, because that would mean they would have to have international observers in this area. And then they would see the flow of terrorists moving in and out. And this is why they couldn't have this happen. But we can see right now, Turkey will have to prove to Russia that they are ready to change their ways. And once they close the border, that is one of the biggest indicators showing us that they are moving closer to Russia and further away from the US and NATO. We see that the United States Department of State is blaming Russia for the airstrikes on their moderate rebels. Now, Sergei Lavrov is out there saying this is ridiculous. We've been asking the United States to give us the coordinates of the moderate rebels and who is the moderate rebel and who is the terrorist. All these groups are intertwined. So when we do our bombings, we're aiming for the terrorists and we believe they're all terrorists. Show us who is not a terrorist. The problem is the United States can't do this because they control all the terrorists, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, the Islamic State. Now, Russia is asking Turkey if they can use the Incirlik base for air campaigns inside of Syria. They're saying we don't need it right now, but it would be nice to launch our planes out of that area, just like the coalition forces. And we're going to have to watch that very, very carefully. Now, we're getting a report that when the United States government was battling in Manbij, they gave safe passage to the Islamic State. They allowed them to leave. Yeah. Meanwhile, Russia is destroying the Islamic State. The United States drops leaflets, warns the Islamic State ahead of time, allows them to leave, because they want their proxy armies intact. We can see the Islamic State, they have used chemical weapons in Aleppo. 20 people were hit with mustard gas, and this just proves, once again, that it is the United States proxy army that have been using the chemical weapons. Of course, they like to blame it on Assad, but we know that's all fake, phony, and false. Now, I want to talk about the elections, and we know the Department of Homeland Security, they're going to control the elections. They're in charge of it. But something very interesting happened where Jeh Johnson, he went to state officials, and he is offering all the states around the country his help in protecting the elections from cyber attacks or vulnerabilities. He says the Department of Homeland Security will scan the voting systems to make sure they're clean. Well, this to me sounds like a setup. This to me sounds like they'll be scanning other things. They'll be in there manipulating. If we're really that concerned about voting, get rid of the electronic voting machines. Do it on paper. Have the counts done in front of the people in each area. Then take those counts on paper and pass them up. This way we have a record. But they don't want to do that because we know the elections are fixed. Very interestingly, the Huffington Post ran an article on August 9th entitled, "Does he," that's Obama, "deserve a third term?" That's very interesting because we've been talking about how the president has the ability to postpone the elections. But what about if something happens in one state or two? Can the governors declare a state of emergency and postpone the election in that state? And does that mean that the rest of the other states must stop? They can't continue on. And it does seem that this is feasible under some extraordinary circumstance. Obama could direct the state governors to say, hey, postpone the elections, you have a state of emergency, and we don't know what's happening at this point, so we need to pause everything. Or, as we've said in the past, Obama has the power to declare martial law. This is reinforced by the NDA that declares the U.S. is in perpetual state of war against terror. Now, a false flag would give Obama stimulus where he can suspend the elections and the constitutional rights. The Posse Comitatus Act, 18 U.S.C. 1385, was effectively nullified by the Warner Defense Act of 2006, and then it was further shredded and burned with the NDAA. And if we break this down and we look at all the USC codes, the United States codes 331, 332, 333, we get the following. When a state is unable to control domestic violence and they have requested federal assistance, the use of militia or armed forces is authorized. When ordinary enforcement means are unworkable due to unlawful obstructions or rebellion against the authority of the United States, the use of militia or armed forces is authorized. When a state cannot or will not protect the constitutional rights of the citizens due to domestic violence or conspiracy to hinder execution of state or federal law, the use of militia or armed forces is authorized. And then we have the House Joint Resolution 1292. This resolution directs all departments of the U.S. government, upon request of the Secret Service, to assist in carrying out its statutory duties to protect government officials and major political candidates from physical harm. So we can see that what they're doing right now, and we can see it in Milwaukee, a state could postpone the elections for the country. The United States government then could step in. So this is a real possibility, and we can see this actually happening. And this is something we need to watch. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.